Mr Speaker, just to comment on a few of the points made by the previous speaker who made the point around coattailing and the lack of consensus around this parliament as to whether or not that should be included in the bill. Well, there wasn't a consensus because it was the National Party that didn't want to bring it in. There was only one party around this House, that didn't want to have anything to do with changing the law around coattailing, and it was the National Party, because conveniently the National Party needs act in Parliament. So it needs that piece of the electoral law to stay in power. And I think it's rather rich from the member who just resumed her seat to say that there wasn't a consensus around that when every other party, other than the National Party, who has done it for its own blind self-interest, did not want that part of the legislation changed, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, never in my mind did I think that I would utter the word cordelophobia in the House, because that is what Scott Simpson suffers from. Because, unfortunately, Scott Simpson is scared of these. Scott Simpson hates ribbons, or is scared of ribbons. When he wakes up, when he wakes up in the middle of the night sweating, it's because he hates ribbons. And that is the truth, because that is what that member said in one of the more ridiculous speeches I've heard in this Parliament. He said that this legislation is going to ban rosettes being worn other than anyone by a scrutiny, and ribbons on election day, because they are intimidatory. Well, as Phil Goff has mentioned in his speech, for years, decades, many more years than I have been alive, it's been part of the election day ritual for people, for members of parties right across this House to don one of these scary things. I hope Scott isn't watching in his office. I hope turn away, Scott, if you're watching the speech in your office, because you won't want to see this. He thinks that it's intimidatory to wear a ribbon on election day. And I think that Phil Goff actually made a number of good points about why it's crucial to identify yourself if you're out and about. Oh, here he is. He's over here. Yeah, he's hiding. He's ducking over there because he doesn't want to see the ribbon. So, Phil Goff did make a number of good points around the wearing of ribbons on Ribbon Day. And I think, I hope this is actually mentioned quite a lot in the Select Committee, because it is very important that when you knock on someone's door on election day to check if they have voted, that you identify yourself and why. Oh, so that minister doesn't door knock. When you're knocking on, you identify yourself and where you are from. You can't say go out and vote for X, Y and Z. That is not allowed. But what you can do is say, excuse me, sir or madam or young person, have you voted today? And that is a tradition that has happened for many, many elections, and it is very important that the person that you are in the house that you are knocking knows where you are from. Because if you say something that you shouldn't be saying, then they know how to get hold of you. But the flip side of the situation is what you could have, and it may be an unintended consequence, is someone from some other party could go around saying, hey, I'm from the Labor Party, have you voted? If they say yes or no and they come back with some kind of rude remark, what is going to be the recompense for that if they haven't properly identified themselves? So I think this is a bit silly, and probably evidence that the National Party actually can't get out people on election day to knock on doors. So that's why they don't want it. They don't want that certainly out there. Mr Speaker, the Minister did say that in her speech that our electoral system does have a lot of integrity, and I would happen to agree with her. But I just also wanted to point on one thing that David Clenton said in his speech, and it's good that we are improving the effectiveness of our electoral system, but the efficiency, I should say, of our electoral system. But I would also kind of like to echo his comments about improving the effectiveness of our electoral system by making sure we not only make it easier for people to get enrolled, and that is what this piece of legislation does by way of making it easier to enrol online, but the importance of actually being enrolled on the electoral roll. Why is it important to be on the roll and to make sure you vote? I'm pretty sure that all the members of Parliament in this House will send that message out to the youngsters when they visit their schools in their electorate or outside of the electorate. And I say to them, just make sure you're enrolled and vote. I don't care how you vote, just make sure you have a say in this electoral system, because as David Clendon said, and I agree with him, we have to do a much better job at engaging our youngsters in politics and the decisions that get made in this House. Yes, it's also a challenge for us to excite them to get engaged in politics and the decisions that we make, but I think it's also very important that we tell them about the importance of being enrolled to vote. And certainly I think that the move in this bill does to make it easier for us to not only just update the system and print off the piece of paper to send it in, but to fully enrol and change your details online is certainly a good thing. Mr. Speaker, just talking around some of the details on election day that I think might be just of interest to most of us in this House. It changes the time of which the early vote can be counted. So to the people who are scrutineers and people who go and do that, it used to be 3 p.m, so now they can get in there much earlier at 2 p.m. and go and get the early vote counted. So that's just one of the things, probably boring for those at home, but things that make us excited here in the House, having been through many, many election days ourselves. Right, so a number of other speakers have talked about what is not in this bill, and I just wanted to end the way I started, Mr. Speaker, and that is around the coattailing rule. Robert Peden, the chair of the Electoral Commission, has said, as Mr Goff said, that the coattail rule was a serious concern for most New Zealanders because they don't like what they have seen in terms of, and I think it was the 2008 election, Mr Goff, where ACT got only 3.65%. But where Rodney Hyde took the seat of Epsom, which was given to him by the National Party, and again in 2011 was given to John Banks over a cup of tea, and where that party brought in 5 MPs with 3.65% of the vote. But our colleagues to our left over here from New Zealand First, who got about 0.5% more of the party vote, but no electorate seat, didn't get any MPs in Parliament at all. There was a consensus of all but one parties in this House to change that rule to give the electoral law in our country, as the Minister said, more integrity. But there was a lack of support from that party across the House. So as Kate Wilkinson said, yes, there was a consensus, but that's only because one party did not want to agree to that, Mr. Speaker. There are a number of other changes, I think, that have been mentioned in this. I think we do still have a concern around the declaration of loans up to over $15,000 as to why you have to declare loans that aren't bank loans. I think that's one of the issues that is going to be raised in the Select Committee, Mr Chair. But also I just wanted to raise that there are some things that are common sense things that in this bill that we certainly will be supporting. I think making it easier for physically and mentally disabled people to register with a representative, I think that is a very wise thing to do, and making it easier for them to register online. And just I think the general use of more technology in the registration of electors is a good thing, and I think probably will be a first step towards greater use of technology, probably at general elections. I'm not sure how far away from that, and maybe the Minister might be able to tell us that during the committee stage, but I think if we're moving towards some kind of electronic voting to help and make it easier for people to vote, I certainly think that would be a good thing. It's certainly something that I think is going to be trialled in my area of Mana in some subsequent elections with the Porirua City Council. I think that's a good thing to try and encourage, I guess, more younger people to vote. And I think that's a good thing that we are seeing more use of online technology to help people take part in the democratic process. So, as the two previous speakers from this side of the House have said, we will be supporting this bill to the Select Committee, but I would just like to warn the Chair of the Justice and Electoral Select Committee that will certainly be bringing up his cordellophobia during the Select Committee stages.
I call Tim McIndoe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Being lectured
by Labor members on electoral propriety and fairness is a bit like taking lessons in personal security from Jack the Ripper. This is the party that brought us the Electoral Finance Act, supported by some of the other parties opposite, and they are yet to apologise to the electorate for doing so. But, Mr. Speaker, I am very pleased to see this particular